Good morning and welcome to our forum, Cape Cod, in the time of COVID-19. I'm your moderator, Matt Pitta, the Director of Communications with the Davenport companies here on Cape Cod. My role this morning in our forum is going to be to direct our conversation with our panel of experts, whom we'll be introducing in just a moment. We've gathered them from various industries and sectors from around Cape Cod, and we'll be discussing how this pandemic has impacted our region, where we are right now with COVID-19, and really, most importantly, where are we going in the future? Where are we headed in the next several weeks and months here on Cape Cod? We're being streamed and viewed on several platforms, so thank you to all of you who have joined us here and will join us for this important section over the next hour or so. And here's our brief plan. We're going to introduce our panelists and then ask them to give us a little bit of a quick overview of how their individual sectors and areas of expertise have been impacted by COVID-19. And then we're going to launch into a roundtable discussion of where we go from here, because that really is the big question as we all try to find our way through this issue, this pandemic here on Cape Cod. So let's quickly introduce our panel of experts, and we know many of you out there watching as well, and we have members of the media as well. We'll be hearing from you a little bit later in our forum. From the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, the CEO, Wendy Northcross. Wendy, always good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Matt. Nice to be here.
Great. From the Cape and Islands Association of Realtors, their CEO, Ryan Castle. Good morning, Ryan.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. From the Housing Assistance Corporation, their CEO, Alisa Magnotta. Alisa, always good to see you.
Hi, good morning.
And from MassHire Cape and Islands Workforce Board, their Executive Director, Kara Galvin. Hi, Kara.
Good morning.
And good morning. Welcome to all of you. So what we'd like to do is we're going to start out briefly, have each of you give us kind of a quick overview of how these individual sectors, which really make up the majority of the Cape economy, housing, business, and the workforce as well. Give us a very brief overview of how you've been impacted over the past several months, and then we'll launch into a further in-depth discussion with questions about what you think we're going to be seeing over the next several weeks and months, and really how the Cape is going to move forward. So I'm going to start out with Wendy Northcross from the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce to give us, if you will, Wendy, kind of the big picture. When you take a snapshot of the Cape economy, your organization is really kind of at the forefront of all of these sectors, working with all of us on a regular basis. So give us what you think is kind of your snapshot overview of how the Cape has been impacted since really the beginning of March.
Thank you, Matt. You know, the Cape has a $14 billion regional domestic product, and those are sectors that are most concentrated here in our region are healthcare, construction, and tourism, and it's almost in that order. So while everyone thinks that tourism is the main driver, it is critically important, but we have a very dynamic mix of sectors on Cape Cod. So interestingly, we have been looking at the hit that healthcare has taken. The construction industry seems to have done a dip and then rebounded quite quickly as people are home and looking around the house and saying, you know, maybe I need to do this project while I'm sheltering in place. And then certainly tourism, we're noticing significant shifts in travel. Some of that will be temporary, some of it may have long impacts to the region. So we're really tracking all of that. We have seen through August 1st, our hard data through August 1st for the hotel industry shows that a 28-day running average, we're down around 31% in occupancy. With that said, we are leading the state in occupancy for hotel stays. Don't have the data in yet for short-term rentals, but we did a pretty extensive business survey with the Cape Cod Commission at the outset of the pandemic. We showed some data that we can share the URL with you, but we have April information that shows a pretty devastating impact from the pandemic. I think it's interesting now to see where people are moving out of that just shutdown mode and how they're regaining. But we can talk a little bit more about that as we go along.
Thanks, Wendy. Let's talk a little bit about the housing issue. We're going to hear from both Ryan and Alisa, because these two issues really, I think, have become conjoined, if you will, over the past couple of months. People have been challenged in terms of being able to stay in their homes when it comes to the ability to pay rent. But then on the other side, the real estate market has just exploded in the past several weeks. So Ryan, we'll go to you for a kind of a quick overview of a snapshot of what's going on in the real estate industry. Prices are through the roof. Inventory is disappearing. What's going on the real estate side?
Yeah, so the whole COVID era from the stay-at-home orders through now have been a tale of two different markets. From early in March through about May 15th, we saw massive year-over-year sales declines, not many new houses coming on market, pending sales, activity really had just stopped. We saw a lot of interest though, with listings getting views online and things like that showed potential, a lot of pent-up demand. So then after about May 15th, we've seen an explosion in the real estate market. And when I say this, it's unprecedented what we're seeing on Cape Cod, even through the big growth areas we've had in the past, right? So in July alone, we did $140 million of volume, more than any month inside the MLS of residential properties, more than any other month than we've ever done before. So what we're seeing is more people buying more expensive homes than they ever have. But what we've also seen overall trend is buyers are much more willing to buy in this environment than sellers are willing to sell. And there's a variety of reasons for those. But what that means is inventory is really shrunk. And right now, what we know is that the real estate market is kind of propping up other businesses and will prop up the entire real estate economy, because the different kind of buyer of what we're seeing, a lot of people are reporting 35 to 50-year-old buyers with kids coming down, will work from home, potentially be here year round, potentially be here 6-7 months. And that's going to give more businesses more economic activity year round. But the difference is that inventory has a potential, shortage has a potential to really hurt us going forward unless we figure out how to get inventory in the short term. You do that through more listings. Through the long term, we have to build more housing somehow in some great way, and because it's really eating it up. And so that's really where we are, because prices are escalating. Median sales price is escalating. One, people with more money are coming down here with more better paying jobs, so they're buying more expensive housing. That moves median home price up. And two is the low inventory is pushing that price up.
Right. Great, Ryan. We'll come back to you in just a couple of moments with some of the questions. And we do see some of the questions coming in from those watching and some of the members of the media. And we'll get to those questions in just a little bit. Now, in the same vein, kind of on the other side of this housing issue, is Alisa with the Housing Assistance Corporation. And while we're seeing this explosion in the real estate market, Alisa, we're seeing amazing challenges for people who are renting here on the Cape, and also for landlords, many of whom are dealing with no rent coming in right now. What's the snapshot from HAC over the past couple of months of how that area has been impacted by COVID?
Well, the pandemic has certainly highlighted, right, the link between housing and healthcare, and housing and our economy. We quickly see that the ability to shelter in place is a privilege, and that many of us aren't able to do that. So when the best cure, or the best prevention for COVID is to shelter in place, we start to see the importance of having safe, affordable housing. And so this pandemic has really just exacerbated an existing problem that we've had, right? We've had an inventory gap for years. We've had an affordability gap for years. In fact, pre-COVID, 45% of renters were either extremely cost burdened or cost burdened. So that means they don't have any savings, right? They don't have the wherewithal to ride this storm out and wait for better days to come. So, when we hear from Kara on the unemployment numbers, and we hear from Ryan on the inventory going at even higher prices, we know that's just we know it's putting a strain on those of us who live and work here year round for the wages that Cape Cod jobs pay. So we have seen an increase in calls to our office for rental assistance, over 400% of an increase. And thankfully, we have some tools in the toolbox that can retain tenancy with the eviction moratorium the governor put in place, and with some rental assistance, emergency rental assistance programs that we started and that we're working with the state on, that I know we'll get into in a little bit. But basically, a bad situation just got worse, and now we are hoping that we can share this information, right, and not look in the rearview mirror and go, gosh, wish we would have known, wish there was something we could do. This is hopefully really a conversation that we all can do something, whatever role and whatever part in this community. So so that's kind of the big picture right now is, it's as bad as everyone's hearing, and we're getting the calls from people who can't pay the rent and have no ability going forward to pay the rent.
Thanks, Alisa. Let's go over to Kara for kind of an overview on the employment side. Right from the outset, Kara, we saw businesses shutting down, obviously, for many weeks, and unemployment skyrocketed. So paint the picture for us where we are right now as we kind of are heading into the second half of August.
Absolutely. I mean, without a doubt, we went from strong unemployment back in February at 2.9% to historic highs still now in June at over 17%. And we're quite aware that Barnstable County was one of the hardest hit areas. And we also know that in our region, we rely very heavily, as we all know, on the weeks between Memorial Day and Labor Day for a number of different reasons. We rely on hospitality and related industries and to bring in a number of different for the employment, for the money that it brings into our region. So we're really looking at how do we bring the employment back to our area and what's been affected here. Accommodations and food services, healthcare, as Wendy already mentioned, retail trade, they're all areas that have been severely impacted. And we're working with our Career Center, the MassHire Cape and Islands Career Center, to find out how we can help our job seekers and our employers during this crisis.
All right, thanks, Kara. So let's get into a roundtable now, and I'll kind of direct some of the questions, and then we'll get into some of the questions from members of the media out there as well today. And I'll throw this out there to the panel and how we'd like to handle it in terms of who wants to take it first. But one of the issues we've seen is there's this kind of disconnect that's been going on in terms of the economy. Unemployment, the rates are so high, and you look at what the unemployment rate right now, and I think, Kara, you said, what is it approximately right now?
It was 17.4% in June.
So you look at an employment rate of 17.4% in Barnstable County, but yet, and from our standpoint in our companies, the Davenport companies, and we're involved in real estate, construction, we're involved in resorts, et cetera, it's next to impossible to get employees. Businesses, many of them are beyond struggling trying to get people to come to work. So a lot of people have asked, what's that disconnect? You have this high unemployment rate, but nobody's taking jobs. What's going on in that area? Where's the disconnect? Whoever wants to jump in on that first.
Well, I do think, I'm going to jump in really quickly because I think that the Career Center has definitely done their due diligence in reaching out to job seekers. They've held the virtual job fairs. They've done a great job in trying to gain momentum with both employers and the job seeker in trying to get this going. And admittedly, the virtual job fair is fairly new. It's new for both people, for both an employer and for job seekers. I do feel that some job seekers, it may be an equity issue. We do take for granted that everybody has access to a computer or a phone. And even though our Career Center is open and operating and providing services, they are closed to foot traffic. So I think that's a little bit of a stumbling block. However, I do feel that with the expiration of the $600 recently, there could be an uptick in people continuing their job search. But I do feel that because we have an older population here on the Cape, that there are those individuals who are reluctant to return to work still.
So that's definitely playing an impact there. So anyone want to jump in on that in terms of how
childcare.
Absolutely.
I would not have been able to go back to work if I didn't have childcare. I would have had to figure it out and stay home.
Childcare and the uncertainty with the school schedule as well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So our members have been telling us, Matt, that they're desperate to have people come back. Some of them are just leaving the job, so maybe people don't want to take the risk, the health risk. But the employers have said, my staff can't come back because they don't have adequate childcare. or safe childcare. So actually the Reopening Task Force has set up a subgroup to specifically look at the issue, because that hit us immediately once we could start to reopen business. And it's probably only getting to be more of a challenge with the whole conversation about how schools reopen. But childcare is at the top of the list.
And childcare now is not even a home resource issue, right? Like there are people with means that can't even find the childcare providers. And so it's not even just a have and have nots area of the childcare.
Right. And the jobs where you have to actually go to work, where you don't have the luxury of working from home, those are usually the lowest paid and service the low income, which are going to be the most impacted by not being able to pay rent. And they're going to have the hardest time trying to knit the sweater together so that they can have the resources to be able to participate in the economy like they used to.
We'll take our home, for example, Matt. You know, my wife has to go into work at the hospital and I stay at home, but we have 2 under 2. I wouldn't even be able to work from home if I hadn't have found somehow be able to snag in-home childcare during this time.
That, you know, that's a scary vision right there, Ryan. You working from home with 2 under 2. I like that mental image for me.
So it sounds like a mixture of issues when you have this disconnect of why unemployment remains so high, but yet there are so many jobs. There's not one reason. Many people may be staying out because of the extra money, but then childcare becomes a huge issue. So as we move forward into the fall, you know, we don't really see this clearing up anytime soon. What's our solution moving forward, at least in the short term, to try to get that unemployment rate down and help people find childcare? Any thoughts on that?
Well, we have to get businesses more fully reopened, and that's only going to come with good health numbers. So fortunately on Cape Cod, people have done the right thing, and we continue to mask and distance and wash our hands and clean well and do things outdoors. Outdoor, as Anthony Fauci said, outdoors is good. That's worked for us all summer. Now, I like to say, but winter is coming. So how do we adapt? How do businesses continue to adapt? As we can continue to navigate breaking business models and reinventing business models, there's some great innovation, there's some great success stories going on, but at the same time, what people thought might be, or I'm going to stay home for a couple of weeks, is now turned into most of the year and may go into next year. You know, the key to getting people back to work is getting those businesses open. Getting those businesses open and letting them stay open is predicated on continued good health.
I just talked to one of our vendors that works with us at our companies, and yesterday he told me that they just received word from their corporate structure. They don't have to come back until July 2021, and they're going to be working from home the whole time. And so now that person I spoke with, they have some childcare issues. So there's these issues, and even if we get through the fall, we get into more therapeutics, and we get to a vaccine by mid to late fall, a lot of companies have already made the decision we're not going back. So even if we continue to have great improvement on the healthcare side of this, I think we're still going to have a lot of these challenges with people who aren't going to be going back to the offices.
Absolutely.
Or traditional work.
Spurring the real estate market too, though.
Yep.
Is, you know, those in the New York metro, Connecticut, Boston metro areas who know they're not going back till next summer. And that's why we're seeing the strange and unique and potentially game-changing thing that we can try to capitalize on as the Cape, of these 35 to 50-year-olds with kids coming down here and buying houses. And let's figure out as a community how we can convert them to year-rounders so that our businesses can become more year-round businesses. That's the key. But one of the challenges is, Karen, talk about with the incomes on the Cape, is these people are bringing New York, Connecticut, Boston metro area incomes down. And that is going to create more of a divide in incomes between those that work from home and those here, since our incomes are so much lower than other places.
Let's go to some of the questions. We'll jump into a question. Doug Frazier from the Times has several questions. We'll take them one at a time. The first one from Doug is he wants to know if we have some specific hard data regarding the extent of the housing crisis pre-COVID and what has happened during the pandemic. And and probably Ryan, this will probably be for you, an example of what the home sales numbers since February compared with sales in prior years in that time period. So thoughts on that?
We release numbers on a monthly basis, and you can find them at CapeCodRealEstateStats.com. One of the things is when you look at sales numbers, you really need to look like 2 months after the activity happens to see that, right? Because a house goes under contract and a month, 2 months later, it closes. So when you actually look at, say, like May data I'm looking at right now, we were down 15% in pending sales and 15% in closed sales for the year over year, but through the end of May. Through the end of July, we're up 10% in pending sales, 0.5% in closed sales, and I imagine we'll be up 5% year over year, 6% year over year by the end of August when everything pending closes. And so you should see closer to that 10% mark that is pending. So what we saw was a complete decrease in March, April, May, and then June and July have rebounded, and August will continue to rebound to where we end up for the year. Doug also had that question on median home value and median sales value. We look at year over year because median sales value is a snapshot of what's being sold in time, not the same house month to month. 1 month it could be a 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath be the median home. The next month could be a 15-bedroom, 4-bed, 2-bath be the median home. So year over year, for the month of July alone, we saw a 15% rise in median sales price, where the median sales price in July was $498,950, and for the year that translates into a year over year increase of 8%. So that's what we're seeing on the sales price side.
Ryan, I want to get to Doug's next question in a minute, but before we do that, anecdotally, and maybe you can confirm this, I've heard several stories. People have put homes on the market, and within 48 to 72 hours, they've had multiple over-asking offers, and the homes are just flying off the market. Are you hearing those stories? People putting property on the market and they're getting over-asking prices.
Absolutely, but one of the unique things is last month we actually increased in days on market on average, and that's because we have such limited availability of homes for sale. More stuff that has been on the market for longer is getting a third or fourth look and selling now. So last month we had a home that was on the market for over 5 years sell. And so you're seeing that. So when you look at the stats, it's not going to show that, but anecdotally, absolutely, homes ready to move into that are priced right at all price levels. Before, it was always under 450,000. You would see very short days on market. Now it seems homes at all price levels are getting multiple offers quickly. And quite honestly, the way a lot of agents have adapted to COVID showing protocols, it's actually better. 1 day of showings, space them out, appointments, that type of stuff. 1 people in at a time, and you make offers at the end of the week.
Let's get to Doug's next question. This may be for Carol, and for Wendy. The skilled workforce, is that eroding due to a lack of housing? Are we seeing an impact on the workforce?
I'll let Kara talk a little bit about this as well, but from what we have seen is the skilled workforce that desires to own a home have taken longer commutes. If they are well employed on Cape Cod, and for example, working at Cape Cod Hospital, they are more likely now to find that the home to raise their family on the other side of the bridges and are doing a daily commute. I think where we have seen a bigger erosion, and I don't have the data for this, Doug, I'm sorry, but the bigger erosion, and this just goes back from decades of dealing with the Outer Cape and the islands, struggle to find seasonal employees, which tends to be really those front line jobs that are not highly skilled. I mean, you need to have great people skills, but easily trained to do a job for the summer. It's harder and harder and harder to fill those jobs in the Outer Cape and the 2 islands, where part of the dynamic is we have a much older demographic living in those regions. They're retired, they don't need to work, they don't want to work, or they don't want that type of a job, maybe a starter at the golf course, but not working, making beds. But the bigger issue there is the median home prices in those regions is far greater. And it's also not a convenient commute. So if you could get that job, but you're living on the other side of the canal, you're less likely to commute.
I want to talk a little bit about the tourism sector. It's obviously a huge part of our economy. here on the Cape. And I'll give you just some anecdotal information from our standpoint. We have the Red Jacket Resorts in our company. And Wendy, you can probably address this as well again. But when it comes to group business on the Cape, group tours and travel, it's almost non-existent. It dried up because you can't have large groups. Tour buses aren't coming here. Large groups have canceled. Large weddings have canceled. Conventions have all canceled. Leisure travel has gone way up through the summer. So some hotel operators are starting to make up some of the revenue on the leisure side. But we on the Cape really still do depend on a lot of that group travel. And there's really no good sign of when that comes back. So on the issue of group travel and getting that segment of the tourism economy back, what's the prospect?
Well, it's a frequently asked question of me in terms of what do we forecast for the travel industry. And like I said, there's been a huge shift. So this year people were driving. They didn't want to get on an airplane. Well, that was good for Cape Cod because we are a drive market. We live, near so many major metropolitan areas where we know people wanted to get out of the city, come to someplace safe. We knew from travel sentiment surveys, people wanted to go to the beach, not necessarily Cape Cod, just the beach. So we were well positioned to capture extra pent-up demand this summer for leisure travel. And the travel industry is comprised of a lot of different market segments. So you're right, the individual traveler that could come and they could safely distance by stay in a hotel, rent a house, go to the beach, do all of that stuff. That's great for the economy. They bring money, they spend money. But then equally, and sometimes more important, is the group business that we can bring here during the shoulder season, spring, fall, winter. We can bring them here midweek because our leisure travel is still a huge weekend phenomenon. So we have literally lost the wedding industry alone on Cape Cod generates $53 million in direct spending just to hold a wedding on Cape Cod. That's pretty much evaporated. I mean, there's some things going on, but that's like gone. People that come here in a motor coach, typically 50 people in a group travel, it's just logistically not viable. And even if it was viable, the customers don't want to do it. Customers don't want to get on a bus with people they don't necessarily know and tour New England. The corporate meeting business, it's all gone to Zoom, right? So all of these other types of ways that we filled in a complete hospitality industry on the Cape with visitors from over the bridges is greatly changed. And people will say to me, well, Cape's done pretty good this summer. And I'll say that's true, but winter, I keep saying this, winter is coming. It's a very different dynamic. We're expecting to have the best performance in the state. So right now, the 28-day running average for hotel occupancy through August 1st was only down 31%. Only 31%. Boston's been down 72%. So we're still down. We're still somewhat suppressed in that particular segment. We have the short-term rental market. That's a metric that will come later. But as we arc forward, we're in danger of losing a lot of group business that stabilizes those jobs for much more than Memorial Day to Labor Day, because we have built shoulders, but that business is gone. So what happens to that workforce? Do they shift? In some cases, I've heard that they have shifted. I heard restaurant workers that this summer said, I have to work outside and I have to be near other people. If I have to work outside, maybe I'll just go work for this landscaper who's been, looking for employees for years. So it's really interesting to see some of the shifts that are going on. The other thing you have to remember too is in the summer, we have a lot of our international students come and get jobs. We didn't have that this year. We also have H-2B employees and they can move around the country. We didn't have them this year. We have a lot of us that go get a second or third job. I'm betting a lot of that didn't happen just out of health concerns. So it's so hard to predict where the workforce ball is moving, but I can tell you there were probably the lack of being able to get enough people through this particular time frame may in fact cripple some businesses that might not make it through the winter.
We don't want to be we don't want to be doom and gloom, Wendy, but is there a number at all that's being looked at or floated of businesses, a percentage that will not survive by next summer, 2021? Is that even in discussion yet?
Well, not from my shop. I mean, it's so hard to forecast. We actually, there was a business survey that was done. We have the business survey back out for round 2, but the result of the first business survey that we did at the onset of the pandemic showed it was very interesting that median number of years that these businesses were in operation that answered was 18 years. 72% of them were year-round, 28% were seasonal. We asked them, how long can you operate with your current cash reserves? Now, this was back in March and April that we asked. The predominant answers were 1 to 6 months is how long they could operate. Now, that was in the depths of everything was shut down. So we're hoping that they had enough business this summer and maybe the attendant expenses didn't come along with being fully staffed. So we're hoping that they could have made enough to stay open through the winter or hold on to those resources so they can be back next summer. That's for the hospitality industry.
Wendy, did it ask about the PPP loan and its impact in the second round?
No, but we are asking it in the second round. We're asking about the PPP loans.
Okay.
And we really are asking, and again, it's not just the hospitality industry. I know people look at me and they think travel and tourism. Half of our members are in the travel and tourism industry. The other half are healthcare, construction, real estate, you name it. We need everybody to answer this survey so we can get a really good sense of what's going on. But I think the PPP loans, which required you to rehire your staff, were ill constructed for our region, and then until it got amended further down the road, it was not a great fit. People did go get those loans, but then they were hiring their staff later, not necessarily in April, May, June.
Let's jump to a Facebook.
Sorry, on the PPP loans, did you have handy? If not, we'll be able to find it and put it out. But how much this region got in PPP loans, these businesses?
Oh gosh, that's a great question, Ryan. I know that the state will tell us how many loans in the state of Massachusetts. I don't know if they can break it out.
They have it per account because I looked at it in the real estate sector. So that'll be great data to put out later on.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Let's jump to a Facebook question. Maria wants to know if there's a resource that can connect unemployed and underemployed persons with individuals or businesses that are looking for in-home childcare. So maybe an employment question for Kara, but whoever wants to jump in on that. So question is, what is out there for the unemployed or underemployed with healthcare, with childcare, excuse me?
We can certainly, I can certainly connect her with the folks over at the Career Center. I know that they would have at least some information. I'm sure Alisa would have some resources as well.
And Cindy Horgan at Cape Cod Children's Place has done a phenomenal job working on this stuff. Wendy and I brought that up to her on a Cape Cod Reopening Task Force meeting the other couple weeks ago. And I mean, the bottom line is a lot of legal concerns boil down to a lot of that issues. Lawyers didn't squash that. But what I would say is I hope that someone takes that on and creates a business out of that, right? Yeah. I think what we see in a crisis like this is maybe businesses coming out, new businesses coming out and filling a need. And that could be a great need. I see a lot of places. I just saw Cape Wing at Kirkland's pivoting to do where you can do your virtual school from their facility for kids at elementary school and stuff like that. So I'm seeing a lot of businesses pivot to help provide that need, and hopefully more will.
Yeah, we're not going to go back to, February 2020, right? So we're all, whether it's housing or business or what, everyone's has the opportunity to innovate here for sure.
Let's do
community. Just one quick. The Community Action Committee (CAC) has they run what's called the Child Care Network. So they will tell you what's open where and how to access that information, and we can get that up on the screen or send it out to people.
Another housing question, back to Doug from the Cape Cod Times. In terms of tools, what tools are out there to address the housing issues, and is there anything new to address the COVID impacts? And he asks, what is needed as a stopgap measure And has this triggered any action on longer term solutions? So back to the housing issues.
Yeah, so I'll start real quick and then I'll throw it to Alisa. One is the best thing the legislature is doing is in the economic development bond bill that's passed both House and Senate is the housing choices legislation that will help long term. That's the long term solution. Part of the long term solution, be able to pass things pro housing legislation at town by town level, at town meeting or town council in Barnstable at a majority vote. To try to build some production and some inventory in. So that will be the first good step. The short term is for those that need help is to go see the Housing Assistance Corporation on that. So I'll turn that over to Alisa.
Yeah, I mean, like we've been saying, we had an affordability gap and an inventory gap pre-COVID, and it's just getting worse. So to Ryan's point, the housing choice bill will help to be one of the tools in the toolbox to help address housing production and getting more housing built in our region. But the affordability gap still is very present and very real. So there are a couple tools in the toolbox. So the governor issued an eviction moratorium that's ending October 17th. We also had the federal subsidized unemployment. So that was an additional $600 a week. And I know that's relatively controversial, but again, when you think about our renters, 45% of them were already cost burdened. That $600 probably just got them whole or close to being whole. So thinking longer term, the state and our agency, we have funds for emergency rental assistance. So we have funding from Department of Housing and Community Development for RAFT dollars, which is rental assistance for families in transition, and IRMA funding, which is emergency rental and mortgage assistance. And then our agency also has its own fundraising arm that is amassing funds, again, that we can distribute out into the region. We have about $1.5 million to distribute. To date, we've given out $500,000. And the reason that this is such a good conversation, we start talking about like businesses and real estate market, because the unintended or the audience that's not often talked about are the landlords, the small business owners who own 1 to 4 units and provide a very important type of housing in our region with year-round rentals. And if they're not getting their rent, then they can't pay their mortgage, right? And we can see how at some point, there is a possibility of a crisis, of a foreclosure crisis, or even in a hot real estate market, you could see how a landlord would potentially want to just get out and sell it into a hot market, and then that home is used either for another year-round person or a seasonal rental, but it displaces somebody, could potentially displace somebody who's currently living and working on Cape Cod. So that has given us quite a bit of pause and concern. We did a survey of landlords on the Cape and learned that about 40% of them say that their tenant is behind on rent, and about 75% of them want to work out a payment plan. So trying to bridge these different resources, whether it's town money that can be used, or the state money, or our fundraising dollars, but trying to help with that safety net, not just for the tenant, right? That's a very obviously important, crucial piece, is to preserve the tenancy, but also to preserve the year-round rental and to figure out tools and strategies for those landlords.
Well, that's, I just want to follow up on that. That's a potential of almost a two-headed crisis, because if the tenant can't pay and the landlord can't find some type of assistance, the landlord's going to default on the mortgage. The landlord's going to lose the home, the tenant's going to lose a home, and now you have two people who are basically in serious trouble with that. So there has to be, I believe, some solution from both sides, from the tenant side, but also from that small landlord side, who many of those small landlords can only pay their mortgage when they get the rent.
Yeah, there are moratoriums, just the stopgap, right? The rental assistance, and what we've seen towns, I know Chatham and some other towns are really looking at it. The rental assistance is the fix, right? to try to make these landlords whole so the tenant stays in the unit,
Yep.
so the landlord can pay their mortgage, and we end up preserving that unit as we get through this crisis. That's the long-term goal.
Yeah, and there's discussions at the State House and with DHCD and Housing Court of mediation and ways to help with what they're expecting to be is just, a glut of eviction cases coming October 17th. So there's talk of like how to slow that down, what more tools, what other resources for the landlord, for the tenant can be put into place, because as Ryan said, there's two sides. There's going to be two injured parties. That's going to really have a deeper impact on our overall economy and communities.
Matt, you guys at Davenport companies know better than anyone, but landlords don't want to evict, right?
Yeah.
Like they want good tenants, they want paying tenants, they want tenants that have access to those funds because they're just trying to provide a place to live, and that tenant is a place to live. So you're right. I think what we've seen come out of COVID, if I would say in the landlord-tenant relationship, is more of a mutual understanding that you guys have the same goal at the end of the day. And I hope that's what, to me, I've seen out there from the landlord side of things, that I hope continues that thought process moving forward.
Yeah, so we in our survey, majority of, exactly to your point, the landlords don't want to evict. They want to work out a payment plan. They want to make it work. No one wants to displace anyone. It's a hard thing to do. It's expensive. It's time consuming, and then to have the vacancy on top of it. So you're absolutely right. It's a business. They're business owners, right? They want to mitigate the risk as much as possible.
You're both right. At the end of the day, absolutely nobody wins in an eviction. The landlord doesn't win because the landlord puts out a lot of money for the eviction. The tenant doesn't win. So avoiding evictions at all times is really the best way to go. I want to take a quick pause here, let folks know what we're going to do, because this hour is flying by. It's a great discussion about some very important issues for the Cape. We've got about, say, 16 or 17 minutes left to go. What I would like our four panelists to be kind of thinking about as we roll through these other questions, it's always important in forums like this to not just have us talk about it, but to kind of have some solutions and forward-looking thinking. So just so my four panelists are thinking about this before the end of the hour, we'll be asking you at the end to give us what you believe in each of your individual sectors. What is the Cape going to look like in a post-COVID world? Because I think we all realize we're never going back to the way it was in February, but we hope to have a different look, maybe even a better look. So be thinking about that over the next few minutes for the four panelists. That'll be our final question. And for each of you, what is the Cape really going to look like in the future? So let's quickly get back to our questions because time is flying. Let's go back to Doug Frazier. This is kind of related to what our final question will be, but Doug asked if there's still a COVID situation continuing into next year with what he calls a muted economy. What's it going to look like? So maybe, Wendy, I'll start with you. It's hard to pull out that crystal ball on this, but if you have another muted economy, what does the Cape look like next year?
Well, I think if we have another muted economy, you can be sure that the rest of the state and New England and probably the country are going to be in the same bucket. We have been actually pretty resilient and have pretty good performance. I do believe that we will have more of a year-round economy. I think, as Ryan has indicated, we've just taken a 10-year leap into the future. People are able to do remote work. Children are able to do remote education. Now, whether that's preferred or not is a whole other conversation, but they are enabled to do it. We are seeing new funding streams coming out of Boston for deployment of broadband. So we can have robust broadband, at the very least, to make sure our children, if they can't be in a school building, have access to adequate education. So I think we will become a much more year-round economy with people making money in much more diverse ways because their employer is pick a place on the planet. And I think that we have an opportunity here to showcase our excellent healthcare system, our excellent education system. Don't forget, Massachusetts schools, public schools, are #1 in the country. And if Cape Cod was one big school system, we would rank #4 in Massachusetts. So we have an amazing quality of life. We are safe. We are, well educated here, so we have the ability to kind of craft our way into the future. Will there be pain? Of course. Will there be businesses that don't survive? Of course. But maybe some of that creates new opportunity. The innovation that comes out of this substantial shift is actually pretty exciting. And if we can continue to work together and stay healthy and quickly get to that herd immunity and vaccine stage, I think that we will have maybe one more muted summer, but I'm betting we'll be in far better shape by next summer.
Let's jump to a question from Liz on YouTube. This, again, goes back to real estate rentals. What advice is there out there for people who are now looking for year-round rentals? Liz says she's been searching for months using the Times and realty offices with no success. I'm hearing this from a lot of people as well in terms of, they just cannot find year-round rentals right now. So what's out there? Ryan, we'll start with
Davenport companies first to start with, right? Availability.
We're pretty booked up right now.
And then we'll let Alisa answer.
Yeah, I mean, we have a 0% vacancy rate throughout the region. I mean, it is unfortunately going back to why we need housing choice bill to pass, why we need more inventory. We just don't have the diversity of housing and of rentals. And again, this is why we're advocating for the preservation of the year-round housing that we currently have. So I know that doesn't answer the specific question, but I would say we help people with housing search at our office at Housing Assistance Corporation. And it's a very real issue and very real problem. A lot of times people go to coffee shops. A lot of time it's word of mouth. But we do, there are also town pages on Facebook, and then a lot of times a rental will get posted there on a town page. So we can help connect with those resources that we know of, but it's not easy. I'm sorry, we're doing everything we can to try to, add to the inventory, but as are other people in the region, but it is, it's why we're here. It's why we're all concerned. So,
we had a question from Paul. I'm not sure if this got answered in the chat yet. From the Paul from the Provincetown Independent on the PPP loans, getting all the publicity, but the EIDLs, disaster loans are an important source of funding as well. I think we may have answered that, but if anyone wants to just jump on that quickly about the question from Paul at the Provincetown Independent.
I'll just say quickly, the PPP loans have been getting all the attention because if you use it correctly, they become a grant. It's not a loan, it's a gift. The EIDL loan is might have a portion of it. The initial deposit is a grant, but you have to pay that back.
All right, back to Doug Frazier. He apologizes for circling back, and no need to apologize, Doug. That's what we're here for, is to answer your questions. He'd like some more numbers, if possible, on if you might have this, Ryan, or Wendy, or whomever wants to jump in on this, on how much the year-round rental market has eroded since February. Is that an issue?
I don't think we've seen any impact that we can measure because there's an eviction moratorium, right? I mean, the eviction moratorium came pretty early in March, right? And so I think what Alisa's looking at is how to get assistance into those people's hands for that year-round housing so that they're not evicted, so that we do not see an impact. I think that's the focus right now.
Yeah, I think that's right. We don't want to have the rearview mirror or, the Monday morning quarterback syndrome where we wish we would have known or we wish we would have seen this and could have done something. That's exactly right. There's a change in the marketplace. Eyes wide open, and what proactively can we be doing as all the housing agencies? This isn't just Housing Assistance Corporation. This is everybody who cares about housing, cares about our economy, cares about living on Cape Cod. Trying to figure out a way to preserve and retain the year-round rentals that we currently have.
All right, so what I'd like to do now, we have about 10 minutes left to go. I want to make sure we leave enough time to get to that final question I have for the panelists, and then if we have some time after that, we can field any last-minute questions that may come in. So again, as I said, with forums like this, we always want to have some type of forward-looking solutions and ideas of where we're going and not just have folks talk. And we've had a great conversation this morning. So, Karen, I'm going to start with you on the employment front. And this is really, so many people just want to know, once we get through this, at some point, hopefully, what are we going to look like? So from the employment side, the workforce development side, a post-COVID world on the Cape, what does our employment structure, what does our employment situation look like once we're beyond this?
I do think things are going to look much different. I think we're going to capitalize, as Wendy said, on our innovation. We're going to capitalize on the education that's taking place in our high schools. We have great high schools here on the Cape, and they have already started doing amazing things. They're doing the innovation that's taking place is fantastic. We have 2 vocational schools that not only lend themselves through 9 through 12 education, but also adult learners. We need to make sure that those folks that are out of work right now, that if they are in need of retraining, are taking part in training at the Career Center that are going to lend itself to promoting self-sufficiency, because that will help us become a year-round economy. We need to look to healthcare. That's also going to become and continue to grow here on the Cape. I think that we're going to look at a lot more positions within IT, because it's a sector that's going to be able to cross many sectors. So I think that innovation is going to be exceedingly important as we continue to grow post-COVID. And I think too, just the ability to be able to work at home is going to allow the technology features, things that we thought years ago, or even just 2 years ago, seemed so far away, aren't that far away. We're just going to grow so quickly, and it's going to be very exciting over the next couple of years.
Alisa, the housing market from all aspects, what does it look like in a post-COVID world here on the Cape in terms of rentals, year-round ownership?
You want me to be Pollyanna?
Well,
real.
Whatever you like.
All right, so I'll say I moved here after our last crisis in this country, after 9/11. I moved here from Los Angeles, and it was supposed to just be for 6 months to kind of regroup and figure out where we were going to go. And I've been here for 19 years and raised 3 daughters here. So, the transition that's happening in the marketplace, as Ryan's pointing out, of people buying homes and potentially living here year round, I think is good. I think it's going to be a great thing for our community, especially as Kara and Wendy have alluded to of our year round businesses being more robust in a year round economy. I also think that this crisis has really punctuated and highlighted the realization that we need to invest in housing. We have to invest in the preservation of it. We have to invest in the building of it. And we have to figure out ways to bridge that affordability gap. And again, this isn't all hands on deck. This is not Housing Assistance Corporation. This isn't one agency. This is a community problem that requires people coming to the table with resources and ideas to fill gaps that are there in the marketplace now. And one of the things I love about working on Cape Cod, as evidenced here with my colleagues and other committees and councils that I'm on, is we take care of ourselves, right? We're local. We care about our people. We care about our communities. And so I think we're going to see more of that. I think this is an opportunity to buy local. Live, Love, Local just did a survey and has a nice report out about the benefits of buying local, and definitely all the chambers work, and every chamber in every town really supporting the businesses. That's what's going to keep the money coming into our economy, that's going to be able to afford people like us to be able to pay rent and buy homes here. So and also this notion of being collaborative as human service agencies. The COVID experience again has really brought some of us close together to create alliances and partnerships that we could have done all along, but the crisis has brought us together in ways to share funding and share resources that I hope will continue on, and I believe will continue on, because we all love living here. We all love the place that we live in, and we have great colleagues. And the stronger we can make it together, the better it's going to be for everybody else. And housing is central to that. Housing is the foundation of all of that.
Ryan Castle, let's go to you. The post-COVID world, if you would, for real estate on Cape Cod.
So I hope like 100 more Alisas move here during this time period, like after 9/11, because that would make the Cape a much better place. I guarantee you that, because she's one of the best things we have going on the Cape. The second thing is, though, I mean, I think really honestly, though, is that year-round economy, right? Like, so all these housing sales we're having now, what we know nationally is that every 2 housing transactions equal 1 full-time job. You see it from the pool installers, the landscapers, the fence companies, as Wendy talked about renovations earlier. It's really spurring a sector of that economy around housing to really take off. And so I think you're at some level, no matter whether we add inventory or, inventory continues shrinks, like we don't have it. There's not an insatiable appetite for demand. At some point, demand will level off, because all those that want to come here based in a post-COVID world will have come here, and it'll go back to a normal demand period. But when they are here, we need them to be, they have higher discretionary incomes, because they're pulling, New York, Boston, Connecticut incomes. And so they can spur more business. What I really hope, though, in the long run, is we see a whole stream of businesses that were existing and new ones that have innovated and adapted and really adapted to the 2020, 2021, 2022 mindset. And really, you see that right now with the retail and the restaurants. Some of these guys are really doing unique, cool stuff and really have pivoted. And so if business owners who want to survive take that mindset, we can see some really great things on the Cape.
All right, Wendy Northcross, we come back to you. Your big picture look at Cape Cod, kind of big picture economy look post-COVID at some point, hopefully soon.
Well, I do think that there are some very significant things that we can do. We can continue to support. One of the reasons the Cape Cod Chamber has been so focused on wastewater is that wastewater is the underpinning to being able to create housing in places where we need it, where we want it, and to protect our water, but also to affect the price of that housing. If we can supply the wastewater infrastructure, which Cape Cod is virtually very little, but we've changed that. We now have the short-term rental tax. We now have the water protection tax, helping to fund our municipalities' ability to build wastewater. We need to continue to do that. We need to look at rezoning potentially some commercial buildings that aren't needed for office space anymore, but maybe become excellent opportunities for new styles of housing. We need to be able to retain our diverse workforce. We need rental opportunities, not just for young people that are starting their careers, but for those of us that want to downsize out of the big house and not have the burden of maintenance all the time. We want rental opportunities. So we need to have that diversity of housing, get away from the monoculture of single family homes. And I think that will breed a lot of opportunity for the Cape. We're growing the blue economy. It's successfully got a latch hold here. We have more of the blue economy in our region than almost any other place in the country, but we need to grow that, and we need to have a skilled workforce for that. But we want Cape Cod to remain a real place, the place that people will continue to want to come here to shelter during a storm. And I think that we can do that. You just have to have some political will, and we have to be aware of the issues that help or hurt our region.
We have just about 2 minutes left to go. I'd like each of you, if you have a resource available, a website, so that all of those folks who are watching, if they'd like to, Kara, just a website or a resource that people might want to go to?
Yes, our website, oh gosh, it's so long, I'm going to type it in. It's really long and obnoxious, but I will type it in so people
Perfect.
I'll type in ours and the Career Center, so job seekers who are looking for work can seek those services as well.
At least for you, at HACK?
So we have an online application that accesses all the different rental assistance programs we have, and it's available at hackoncapecod.org, HAC on capecod.org.
Perfect. Ryan?
You can go to our website to find housing market data, and also some of our initiatives that we work hand in hand with Alisa and the Housing Assistance Corporation on promoting housing affordability and availability at capeandislandsrealtors.com.
And Wendy?
There's a great new website called reopeningcapecod.org. You can find a lot of resources there for business or for residents. If you're struggling with the reopening process or you just want to get some good data sets, we have some amazing data sets linked there.
I'd like to thank the four of you for being with us here today. Before we go, there are a lot of folks that work behind the scenes, and Alisa, if you want to just let your staff was instrumental in this, and we never want to go from one of these without thanking everybody who helped make it possible.
Yeah, well, Jody Keegan, thank you. Chris Kazarian somewhere, Shauna Mose. Trying to think if you put me on the spot there, Matt. I was going to thank you too.
Yeah,
I mean, for jumping in and weaving us all together. But yeah, I have a great team at Housing Assistance Corporation, and I'm glad they stepped up and my crazy idea to quickly pull this together, so they made it work.
Well, we appreciate all of you being with us here today. A lot of great information. We said we keep it to an hour, and we're pretty much exactly at that right now. This program will also be archived and viewable on YouTube and many other social media platforms after the live broadcast here today. So be sure to check out all the different platforms for that. Our guests and our panelists here today from the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, Wendy Northcross, from the Cayman Islands Association of Realtors, Ryan Castle, from the Housing Assistance Corporation, Alisa Magnotta, and from MassHire, Cayman Islands Workforce Board Executive Director Kara Galvin. Thanks to the four of you for being here today. Very informative. We hope that many Cape Codders will find this information useful. I'm Matt Pitta from the Davenport Companies here on Cape Cod, and we'll be here for you when you need us. So all of our organizations are here. Thanks to the four of you, and thank you everybody for watching here today.
Good job.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.